It's not every show that gets a presidential endorsement. Mr. Biden, tell us what you think about the Brad and John show.
These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
It could have been worse. He might have tried to bite Brad on the knee. Now it's back to Brad and John on the BJ show.
John, what do you think of our new intro? Are you awestruck with that, John?
It was fantastic. I love the fact that Joe Biden on his way out is spending a little bit of time paying homage to us.
He's gotten a little bit unhinged. I mean, this. How many times does he? If you've watched that, I don't know if that was a press conference I was taken from the other day. He's gotten into this, I'm a tough guy from Scranton. Us boys in Scranton wouldn't have put up with that. I mean, and the sad part of that is, isn't that exactly what they're against now? That
the bullying,
right?
The mean talk. You can't do that. You can't talk about physical violence. That's bullying.
Sort of that tough guy violence. Hey, you know what? Remember what was years ago? He said, "I'm going to take that Trump out behind the barn." Isn't what he said, or was whatever that was? The deal was. Okay, that is John Combest, Combest. We have to flag the tape, and hopefully the tape, it's not even tape anymore, it's all digital recording, today, because today is Election Day 2024. And because the reason I say that is we do this show live. It's on the air live this very minute, 7 to 8 o'clock every morning, Monday through Friday. And that is a Central Standard Time. We're no longer on Daylight Savings Time. But we do record it, unlike yesterday where only part of it got recorded. And then we chop it up and we put it up on the podcast, and we put it up on our YouTube channel. That is bjshow.video. That'll take you right to our YouTube channel. Real easy. You don't have to search around or anything like that. And today is the day. And unfortunately, for the people in the St. Louis area, it's just monsoon season out there. It's crazy, John.
It's nuts. It seems like it has rained, at least in St. Louis County, for 24 hours straight.
Oh, it has. I mean, and it's not going to stop. I was, before we went on the air, I was telling you, me being Mr. Weather Nerd, go to Mississippi State, get my meteorology degree, but don't finish. It's just a bizarre pattern because most of the time you look at these patterns and, you look at them an hour and the change. It's been the same pattern right now. If you look at this storm pattern right now, it goes all the way, the very end of it goes from Corpus Christi, and if you know anything about your geography, that's almost down into Mexico. It goes through Houston, all the way up through Little Rock, Arkansas, through St. Louis, and all the way up into the Great Lakes, up and through Chicago. And it's one continuous storm pattern. And it's been like this for at least, this particular pattern, for at least 14 hours now. And it's like, okay, it's not moving. It's just sitting there. And in some areas, you look at the radar, there's some, thank goodness we don't have too many of the red or orange areas, which are the severe thunderstorm areas. But at least in our area, there's some yellow, which is not good. That's some heavy duty stuff. I know flights last night were diverted out at Lambert. It's been a while since they've done that. Aren't too many times they shut down Lambert, but they did last night. So it's just nutty. So, John, we're going to try to muddle through the day today. And, for all those people who voted early, you're smart, right?
Because yeah. And depending on what estimate you listen to, this is not in the top 3, so we could touch on it. Depending on who you listen to, roughly 30% of people in Missouri will vote early this time.
Now, this is interesting because this is one of the reasons the proponents of early voting always make is the fact that if there is a weather incident, and I'm going to say some kind of other incident, but I don't really know of any other kind of incident unless the Russians invaded or something like that. But this is the kind of thing where a lot of people wake up on Election Day and go, I'm not standing out in the rain, and they don't vote, right?
You're exactly right. Yeah, that's one of the key arguments. And so if you think about if voter estimates statewide are between 70 and 75% turnout of registered voters, and if 30% to 35% have already voted, so roughly half of people, if you're going to a polling place today, in theory, you would have to stand in line between roughly half the number of people that you ordinarily would.
There's so many things that this whole year has been crazy. Remember, we talked about the fact that I remember hearing that guy that he talked about, history books. You normally see history books, it talks about, what happened in the span of years from 1918 to 1925 and things like that. And he said, they're going to write a book about July of 2024. Okay, this entire election season has been so bizarre because even in the last 48 hours, Kamala Harris has drastically changed her campaign style. Have you heard about this? Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
She no longer mentions Trump.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a nice switch in the last 24 hours.
Well, actually, I think it's like 48. I think it started actually over the weekend. But
wow.
The interesting part of that is, remember when she did her ellipse speech, which was, and which nobody cared about because they were too interested in Biden calling all the Republicans garbage?
Yes.
I think she mentioned Trump. I can't remember the exact number. It was somewhere in the 20s, like 25, 26 times. Okay. She now no longer mentions him at all. Now, also, I find this interesting, and not being a Trump fanboy, but remember, then they started pivoting and say, well, he's old, he's in bad shape, he's worn out. The dude was campaigning yesterday. He made like 4 stops, and I think he was actually still on stage last night at like 11 o'clock.
Yeah,
now,
I saw some tweets about it from the campaign this morning. Just the motor on that guy.
Think about the people you know who are in their mid to late 70s, okay? Maybe it's your mom and dad, maybe it's your grandparents, maybe it's you. And think about the stamina it takes to and once again, everybody talks about, when you think about it, that if you travel, quote unquote, you travel, get on a plane, and everybody go, oh my God, traveling's so tiring. Why is that? You're sitting on your butt most of the time. You're sitting at the airport waiting for the plane. He's like traveling all day long. If you can imagine like being on a, like let's say you just I did this one year where I just booked a bunch of tickets in Southwest, and I had lunch in Oklahoma City, and I had dinner in Kansas City. It was sort of fun. Matter of fact, I did that on Thanksgiving Day, believe it or not, which was sort of interesting. So the first flight out of St. Louis, I think my first flight was from St. Louis to Kansas City, and it was me and like 5 other people. But that was sort of interesting. But think about that. And, and not only that, Kamala Harris is no young person either. She's what, 59, 60?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, there was a time when in the United States, you go back 100, 150 years, the average age for a man, I think, was like, 48 or something like that? And a woman was like 52, something like that? Anyway. So that is John Combest, Combest, and he does this website. He's done it for 23 years. We start the show off with the top 3. He takes all the things that are on his website, and we essentially, what would you call it? Condense it, bring it down, focus. Summarize what he thinks are the top 3. We got this guy in who, believe it or not, is in Norway, but he's still doing some work for us.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what does he do?
Now on with the countdown.
And we start off with?
In third place.
Let's take an alarmist headline, which sounds really frightening and dramatic, and then break it down, Brad. We'll summarize it to tell you the most important point, which is, hey, NBD, no big deal. The screaming headline from the Post-Dispatch today: Judge denies Missouri's attempt to block election monitors for St. Louis. That sure sounds like Missouri standing in the way of justice. But in fact, if you read a little bit more closely, you see that the DOJ came out on Friday and said they would be sending federal election monitors to St. Louis, offered no other details. So yesterday, AG Andrew Bailey and Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft filed a lawsuit challenging the DOJ and said, not so fast with your stinking election monitors in St. Louis City. As it turns out, the DOJ then decided subsequently to divulge, well, we're only sending 2 people, and it's to keep an eye on one polling place where there were complaints about handicapped voting access. So much ado about nothing, Brad. Now, what I find interesting about this is that AG Andrew Bailey and Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft both said that information to them was not available about the DOJ only sending 2 election monitors to St. Louis. The DOJ didn't provide that information in advance. So now that folks know the feds are only sending 2 people, and it's to keep an eye, it appears, on handicap access, it seems, Brad, that this was just much ado about nothing.
So are you saying the Post-Dispatch stirred the pot with their headline? Is that what you're saying?
Just a bit, Brad. And now on its face, if I, as a partisan Republican here, Brad, when I heard that the feds were sending election monitors here, I thought, of course they are. And they'll find some way to keep polls open until Thursday at 3 p.m. till everybody who got their St. Louis Development Corporation check can come in and vote for their Auntie Clarice and their cousin Rufus R. Jones. and leave the polls open for 3 days. But it turns out that was just in my head, Brad.
Wasn't it like 4 or 8 or 12 years ago where Putin, actually a little bit like of irony, sent some Russians over here to monitor our polls because he says the elections are so corrupt in the United States? Am I imagining that, or do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that happening, and that happened when you were a write-in candidate for the St. Charles County Council. And if you hadn't staged that campaign, Brad, you would have never had the opportunity to speak at the Republican Central Committee.
John,
it's a chain of life, Brad.
John, I had an interesting day yesterday. I talked to Joe Brazel, and guess who else I talked to?
Ooh, are his initials BE?
No, they're EG. And we'll bring
Eric
it up.
Greitens. That's great, Brad. How's he doing? Is he teaching you how to do Navy frogman marine stuff?
No, he was going to take me into his own private buds class, but that's a whole nother story. Okay, I'll pick up on who I talked to, the second person I talked to yesterday, because you'll find it somewhat interesting. Okay, here we go. Up to number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
If the third story, number 3 today, was about miscommunication in government, story number 2 is an uplifting one about proper communication in government. And Brad, the star of this show is one of your legit favorite government offices. If I said to you, Brad Hildebrand, name one office and one location at which you have had a positive customer service experience, what would that be, Brad?
Department of Revenue, the license plate office in Jefferson City. It's always a pleasurable experience. I'm telling you, it always is.
Yeah, and so for people, if this is your first time hearing us talk about this, Brad will actually drive to Jefferson City because they have concierge service. Brad gets concierge service at the DOR. Well, as it turns out, the DOR is not only efficient in license plate, but in moving quickly if there's a public controversy involving public safety. This story is brought to us by Annalise Hanshaw from the progressive blog called the Missouri Independent. And she looked at the controversy from this summer in which a man was in the locker room at Lifetime Fitness in Ellisville. You remember this whole hubbub, Brad?
Yes, and he driver's license officially said he was a woman.
That you're exactly right. Well, he had filled out, apparently, Form 5532. Now, before the current administration at the Department of Revenue, a gentleman named Wayne Wallingford, apparently the previous administration had created this form where you or I, Brad, could fill it out and just say, ta-da, I am every woman. It's all in me. And then suddenly we could just claim to be a woman and we could have our driver's license changed. So Annalise Hanshaw goes through and she looks at she did a sunshine request and looked at some of the communication within the office and between the office and legislators. And it shows, Brad, how quickly the Missouri Department of Revenue investigated what happened here in terms of how the form came to be and moved, I wouldn't say at lightning speed, to get the form off the website. It looks like there was a little bit of delay there. But Brad, we talk a lot about how slow and inefficient government is, but it appears as though when a man enters a woman's locker room and state lawmakers and the public make their voices heard, government bureaucracy can actually move pretty quickly.
Well, I'll be happy when they allow me to put down that I'm a black male on my driver's license because showing that I am, I'm transracial, and actually I'm a subset of being a black male. I'm what, Mocha Java? Isn't that what my color is? Mocha Java?
Yeah, and you should take that Pantone with you when you travel, Brad. Like when you go through the TSA line, be like, why are they making a black guy wait?
What John doesn't know about, or what he's referring to, is when I was doing the BS show with Shelley, I got very aggravated by this whole thing where, that was one thing. It's showing your whiteness. I'm going like, okay, no, hold on a minute now. I didn't oppress anybody. My relatives didn't get here till like the late 1800s. Matter of fact, my grandfather didn't get here on my father's side. He didn't get here till like 1902 or something like that. And there was no slavery at all around. I didn't do that. So one day I decided, you know what? And, not my original idea, but a friend of mine said, you need to go to the paint store and figure out what color you are. And I go, matter of fact, that's an idea. So I go to one of the paint stores and I literally pick up the chips and I take it up to the guy working there and I go, which one of these is my color? And I held up to my arm and he says, that one. I go, okay, right. I'm Mocha Java. I'm not white, right? Because
that's fantastic, Brad.
If you grab the white chip and hold it up to me, it doesn't look like anything like my skin color, right?
Well, I would still say, as a callback to yesterday's show, you are being very nativist, Brad.
On to number one.
The number one.
Headline from Joe Holliman of the Post-Dispatch. Though not on a ballot, Missouri's Eric Schmitt still notches campaign win. You know, over the weekend, Eric Schmitt was flying all over the country on Trump Force One with Donald Trump. Eric Schmitt was wowing the crowds in Milwaukee, all throughout the country, Brad, in these key swing states. And Joe Holliman brings up the proverbial elephant in the room. If Donald Trump is victorious, what role, if any, might he offer Eric Schmitt in his administration? What do you think, Brad? Maybe Attorney General, huh?
I think he's going to make him the mayor of the city of St. Louis, because wasn't that where he lived in the city? Didn't live in North City. He was born in the city, I believe.
He was not. He was born in Bridgeton.
Oh, that's right. That's right. He was.
Yeah, you may have him confused with another great Missourian, Mike Kehoe.
That Mike Kehoe was born in North City, right? Wasn't that?
Yeah.
Yes.
So the speculation has been that, you know, and the great thing is, I watched Schmitt's speech in Milwaukee, and he talked about the success that Missouri had in suing the federal government, Missouri versus Biden, all these Biden schemes and the success. It sounded a lot like a stump speech to me. Now, Eric Schmitt does a great job, and he did a great job keeping the focus on Donald Trump. But you can't listen to Eric Schmitt speak and hear him talk about the success that he had in Missouri and not think, gosh, this would be a great pick for Donald Trump.
For as was Attorney General?
Yeah, as Attorney General. Or, I mean, that's an obvious role. And you would have a lot of people who say, well, there's probably more senior people. Who are you going to put in that spot? Rudy Giuliani? Get out of here.
Now, does Missouri have the situation where the governor appoints a successor if there's a Senate position that's open?
Yeah.
So that would be Kehoe. Essentially, he would appoint another Republican, correct?
That's correct. So Kehoe could appoint Bill Eigel. You're right, Brad. And we could have Senator Bill Eigel.
Bill Eigel. Well, I don't think Bill doesn't have his law degree, so I think you have to have a law degree to be Attorney General. Isn't that the way it works?
No. I meant as U.S. Senator.
Oh, hold on a minute. I got a cough. So Bill Eigel will be the U.S. Senator?
Or maybe Jay Ashcroft. You know, you had suggested that Jay Ashcroft was going to go to Springfield, Illinois, and be the body double for J.B. Pritzker, which I thought was really offensive. But I don't know. Kehoe could appoint either of his two former rivals to be U.S. Senator.
John, I don't think I said that. I think you said that.
I don't know. We got to go back and listen to the tape.
I don't think I ever said. Well, anyway, all I can tell you is Jay's got a lot of table time to be the body double for J.B. Pritzker. That's all I can tell you. He's got to go to the Golden Corral for every day for like the next 6 months, and maybe he might get into the J.B. Pritzker classification.
Hey, while we pile on Jay Ashcroft, these Missouri elections, I predict, will go very well. There have been a lot of snafus, but there's no question. I don't think anybody can look at the performance that Jay Ashcroft has had as Secretary of State and said that he did not do an outstanding job administering Missouri's elections.
Okay.
All jokes aside.
So, John, beginning in B block, I will tell you, I already gave you the little hint that I talked to two names that are in the news. I talked to Joe Brazel, and Joe's been in the news because of all the crazy antics with the Tracy Ellis listeners, doing all sorts of weird stuff out there in St. Charles County. You know what? St. Charles County is such a great place. Why do we have to have all these bizarros that make things weird look? Okay. Anyway, the second person we'll be talking about in Block B, if I gave you 20 guesses, you would never guess who I talked to yesterday. And more importantly, at the very last minute, bought some advertising time from me. You will never guess. And
I won't guess?
No, you won't even guess.
And you know what? Tomorrow, we're going to say he ran a great campaign statewide. He just came up a little short. We'll be back in B block.
Okay. You don't even know who it is, and that's the standard answer, right?
I do.
No, you do know who it is?
Of course I know, Brad. How many people have the initials EG in the state of Missouri?
Oh, you must be listening to Westplex, huh?
No, you just said their initials were EG.
I don't think. Oh, that's right. I did say that. Okay.
You did, because I made a joke about Eric Wrighton.
Never mind.
Hey,
okay.
He's got a cute dog named Liberty Bell. That's the teaser for the next season, or for the next set.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?